Hello, I'm Ahmed Elnaggar and this is Monday Legal. Today my guest is Hari Krishna. Welcome Hari, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hari is a very dear friend of mine. He is an Indian UK qualified lawyer. He practiced in United States of America, in Singapore, in India, in UK and in the UAE. He is handling complex and high risk matters related to maritime technology and other more complex legal work, we'll get to that later. Thank you very much for joining me. I start with asking the same question to everybody. What is your coffee?
Black.
Black.
Yeah, every morning I start my day with a nice cup of joe.
Very good. And you do it yourself or you sort it out from somewhere?
Well, I make my own coffee every morning. I don't grind it. I buy ground coffee. But I get organic ground coffee from IKEA.
Wow, okay, nice.
I buy it in bulk and like 3 months at a time. Really, really good coffee.
Really good.
Yeah.
How did you become a lawyer? How did this happen? Like, why? Were you pushed into this or it was by choice? What happened?
Yeah, this is like the one question that you never get the same answer from two lawyers.
Absolutely. Yes.
For me, it was always kind of there in the background. Like my grandfather was a lawyer, but he died when I was quite young, like I was 9. So it wasn't as though there was like a constant figure that people are like, there are all these great aunts going, oh yeah, you should be a lawyer like your grandfather, but there was no immediate presence, Okay. So for most of the time it was, I kind of gradually got into it. Like all my time when I was in school, it wasn't like I was actively thinking of a career. It was just let's have fun, see what happens. What I used to do was, and this was big in India back then when I was growing up, a lot of trivia quizzes. So you'd compete in these quiz competitions and you'd win prizes. So from early on, I had this thing in my mind that people would ask you questions, and if you answered them, you'd get prizes or you'd get money.
Oh my God, that's how you got hooked into being the smart guy in the room.
The helpful guy, let's say.
Yes, I feel you.
So that's kind of how, just answering questions and winning prizes kind of gradually led to me going to law school. Yeah, I accidentally ended up in law school. I don't know why they chose me, but they did. And and again, even after I started law school, I was in two minds. Halfway through law school, I quit. I was like, I don't want to do this. But then I spent a year at home and I was like, actually, you know what? It seems like a pretty good career. Let's see what happens. I went back and here we are.
The UAE is a place where we are kind of privileged that they have 2 legal systems in one jurisdiction. How does this affect your profession? Because you are UK qualified, you have done some work in different jurisdictions, and how did the UAE being able to cater for civil law and common law lawyers at the same time have helped you become a UAE-based lawyer?
Excellent question. Look, it's a unique jurisdiction. When I grew up in India, I had no conception of what the civil law was. Maybe we had like at one point of time when I was in law school, we had a French lawyer come in and say, "Oh yeah, we have a different legal system." Heard him or her, I don't even remember, and then forgot all about it. And then years later, before I moved here, I was in Louisiana. I went there for an LLM, and that's when it really, occurred to me that there are these 2 competing legal systems. And Louisiana, as you know, is the only civil law jurisdiction in the United States.
Yes.
So living there and working there, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she was a big civil law buff, and she was doing a lot of research into the civil law traditions. She was also very interested in the Middle East and Arab legal traditions and so forth. So, secondhand knowledge, I was like, oh, wow, this is really something unique. But I didn't, again, think about it too much until I landed here. And, I realized that the two systems don't just work in parallel. They kind of integrate in all these unexpected ways. You have the civil law system. A lot of people think that the civil law system is somehow uniquely Middle Eastern or Arab, but not quite. The French legal system,
right,
in turn inherits traditions from from Roman law, but you have the codified legal system from France on one side, and then you have the English legal system. And in the UAE, if you go back in history, there was a huge British influence here.
Yes.
So even now, you have you have Arab culture and language and traditions on the one side, and then you have a huge influence of the English language and English law in the business world. So you have contracts governed by English law more often than not. And nobody bats an eyelid. They're like, oh yeah, we'll agree to English law.
Yeah. The consequences can be
if they don't understand what they're signing up to.
Exactly.
And the other way around too. People go, oh yeah, we'll agree Dubai law, right? It's not even UAE law. Oh, well, Dubai law. So you have people agreeing to people doing business and in English. They use the English language, they use English law in their contracts. But then you have the wider UAE jurisdiction, which is an Arabic language civil law jurisdiction. And the two intersect. And then you have the free zones, yes, right? The financial free zones, which are again common law jurisdictions. So, yes. And explaining this to the average person outside the UAE that, we're a civil law, I live in an
civil
Arab
law
state,
jurisdiction.
Which is a civil law jurisdiction.
But you can have the option to, yes,
to enter into contracts under English law, or you enter into contracts under UAE law, but you can still go to an English language code.
Yes.
So explaining this is
difficult.
Difficult.
But that brings me to the next question, which is, can you please simplify it as much as you can for our audience? We want you to say, okay, just give an example. You don't have to give a comprehensive answer, but we want what occasion where you tell your client, let's sign this contract based on the common law, and let's sign this contract based on civil law, and which court. For example, if we are taking the common law, would you go for ADGM or a DIFC court? And just make a simple distinction so that the average person who is not a lawyer can understand this.
There's a lot of people who want the flexibility that English law provides, English law and English civil procedure provides. But at the same time, the DIFC and ADGM codes were really designed to support financial services businesses. They're not necessarily designed to support the average Joe. So yes, on the one hand, you have, the advantages that come with the common law, and the English language and so forth. But at the same time, it can be very expensive. Simply, on a cost comparison, the civil law courts are a lot cheaper. But the flip side is they go through cases at the speed of light. So to get a civil law judge in the onshore courts to give your case the level of attention that one would expect in a common law court, that's asking for the impossible.
Yes, I totally agree with this.
They go through cases very quickly. I know that the onshore courts, they're doing quite a bit to change some of these perceptions, to improve the quality of service. In Abu Dhabi, for example, now you have dual language courts. All the papers are in English and Arabic, and you can ask for translations into other languages, like Hindi or Urdu, or So if you have the option of one of these dual language systems, and you're a small client, you're a small company or a private individual, that's probably the way to go. Just very generally speaking. But also we have the arbitration centers. Arbitration generally tends to be cheaper than litigation. Again, generalizing. Yes. But for anything that's more complex and high value, I would, and again, I might be biased here, but I would definitely say that the common law and either the English language courts or arbitration would be better suited than the onshore court system, because it's just a very busy system and you don't get the level of attention that sophisticated disputes, the complex disputes require.
I want to go back to your specialty. I mean, you specialize in maritime, and what inspired you to?
Shipping lawyers always talk about, war stories. We have loads of them. I just need to look in my pockets to, start picking out stories.
Easy.
How I got into maritime law was this. I grew up like 50 feet from the sea, right? So every morning I'd look out and I'd see
vessels, ships,
right? And my hometown is all ships and shipyards, the Navy, and so shipping was something that everyone was involved in. Everyone I knew had something or the other to do with shipping. So when I went to law school, I was like, law is kind of interesting, but how about shipping?
Okay. So you found the connection between the two interesting things.
Yeah. And as luck would have it, while I was in law school, the top shipping lawyer in India at the time, Mr. Venkateshwaran, he came to my law school to deliver some guest lectures. So I went up to him and I said, I really want to get into maritime law. Would you have any advice for me? And he goes, how about you come and work for me? So that's kind of how it happened. So, I went straight from law school to work for him, and I loved it. So he then said, look, before you get too busy, I'd been there a year in Bombay, working at the Bombay High Court. He said, if you get too busy, your clients will not let you go. So why didn't you go get a master's degree abroad? Because in India that counts for something, and you need to really see how business is done outside the country and so forth. So I went to the US for a master's degree in maritime law.
So the role of your first manager or your first boss in this business extended to be one of the mentors. He was guiding you to.
Absolutely. He was my teacher first, because he was doing these lectures on maritime law, which is how I met him. And he was really my mentor from day one, mentor and teacher from day one. And it was never an employer-employee relationship. It was always, this is what you need to do to get better at being a lawyer, or this is what you need to do to get ahead in your career. It was always, his approach was always like, this is what you need to do to help yourself.
Honestly, I see this in the legal field a lot. The relationship between the employer and employee is never existing. I saw my dad mentoring and teaching a lot of his staff, or a lot of lawyers who worked with him. I never seen him saying, this lawyer worked for me. He always referred to everybody as like working with me. And he always gave the very high respect to everyone, even if they are at the paralegal, at the trainee level, they always called them with a sir and master, and gave them a very, very valuable respect. And I learned this from him. It is the relationship between lawyer who are more senior and the junior ones, and even the trainee ones, they have to be extended, and it's always like that. And I was lucky. I was mentored by him and by another Swiss lawyer, and both of them have treated me in a very nice or respectful way. And I think it's kind of our thing as lawyers that we do not look at the juniors as they work for us. We always see the future, that they are going to grow up to be something. I really respect the working remotely or working from home aspect, and I see it as very beneficial that even the legal industry in general have developed a lot with this kind of arrangement. But the human interaction, the face-to-face interaction, when there's an idea that came to my mind, and I speak to the junior lawyers immediately to tell them, it's good if you write these articles, it's good if you do this research, come and see me how I'm doing this or how am I answering the client. Seeing me in a meeting face to face, understanding the emotional reactions as well, it is very important. And I think it cannot be more than 50% remote. There must be a face-to-face interaction.
If that. I mean, for trainees, for junior lawyers, the more face time you get, the better. And I don't mean face time in the sense of, in the bigger law firms, it's like, oh, I need to be in front of the partner to show him or her that I'm working. But flip that on its head to see, okay, what can I learn by being up close with these more senior lawyers?
How this happens. This takes me to the other one, to the other question, the next one. We have a very stressful job in general. Deadlines, a lot is at stake, whether safety of a client or their money. How do you prepare yourself for tough days, for important meetings? Do you have kind of a special rituals?
I wouldn't say I have special rituals. For me, what works is if I try to keep every day the same, and that's the real ritual
routine.
Yeah, because and this is true of lawyers more than other professionals. We're creatures of habit. Again, the flip side is that lawyers are also more easily prone to mental health issues, substance abuse. So I try to keep things simple. I try to eat the same breakfast every day, for example. I try not to change anything in the morning. I hate waking up early, but I have to, especially when I'm in a trial or, in an arbitration hearing, goes on for days and days, and you have to work late and start early. But keeping things as regular and routine as possible really helps me. I'm not a big believer in superstition or special rituals, or I need to have my special pen, or there are people who do that. It works for them.
I actually do something very simple, as you said. I choose not to buy any other shirts than white. So I only have white shirts. I don't do stripes, I don't do other colors. It's just simple. My size, white, thank you very much. Just to liberate myself from thinking in the morning, what am I going to wear? The only thing I will choose would be the tie, and I match it with my eyeglasses. So that's...
I just have one pair.
Okay. Harry, you practiced in the US, you practiced in India, you practiced in UK, Singapore, and you ended up in the UAE. I want you to tell me two things. First, what do you see as the major difference between practicing law in these jurisdictions, like in terms of clients, maybe the legal environment, how your colleagues, do you see any difference between all of them? And I want you to tell me the story of you ending up in the UAE in the end. So,
I should start with a clarification. I wouldn't say I practiced in some of those jurisdictions you just mentioned. I lived and worked in the UK, in the US, here. The UK and Singapore, for example, I was living here and working there, like conducting trials and arbitration hearings there. And in the UK, I'd have to go spend months on end, dealing with stuff there. So, and in the US, I never qualified as a US attorney. I worked under the supervision of other lawyers. But really, in the shipping world, it doesn't matter. It's all the principles are largely the same.
This is how precise as lawyers they cannot just take whatever that is not accurate enough. They have to stop you, correct you, and then they go ahead with their conversation.
My insurance won't cover it.
Yeah, makes sense.
The biggest difference, two big differences between the UAE and any other jurisdiction. One is volume, right? Other jurisdictions, the US, the UK, by which I mean England, Singapore, India, these are high volume jurisdictions. There's loads of cases constantly. And, people are running from pillar to post, just keeping up with their schedules, with their trial dates and hearing dates and so forth. The UAE has always had lower volume, and which is why you don't see a lot of lawyers who super specialize in just one area. You don't have left eyeball surgeons, So the volume is not as much as other places, but the values, the values of the claim sizes tend to be very high, because this is a major pass-through port, the port of Jebel Ali, and the offshore energy industry, the onshore energy industry, the construction sector. These are mega projects that we see around us. There's massive amounts of commodities being traded. So any sector you look at, the values are very, very high. So you wouldn't have the average, $10, $20, $30,000 claims that you see in some of these other jurisdictions. The claims tend to be far bigger. The other difference that I see is people tend to be very commercial. There isn't a lot of patience for I want to fight this on a point of principle. Let's try to settle this.
So you see a lot of out of court settlement here.
Absolutely. And people don't want to. There's the cost factor, because
yes, of course.
Legal services, court fees, all of those tend to be quite high here, even compared to the usual cities that people mention, like London or New York. Dubai legal costs are comparable, if not higher. So you can see why people don't want to spend very much on litigation or arbitration, because the costs tend to be higher, and that's one factor. The other factor, of course, is people tend to be entrepreneurial. The culture here is definitely entrepreneurial hustler culture.
Absolutely, yes.
Where people want to move on. They want to do deals. They don't want to get derailed.
They don't want to stop in the stress and spend their energy into fighting and conflicts and so on.
And at the end of the day, I might be doing our fellow professionals a disservice here, but litigation or arbitration or any dispute is an obstacle to doing business. It's something that derails your professional or business journey. You have to stop what you're doing, pay attention to this other stuff, whereas the sooner you can move on with things, the better it is. And that's something that in the UAE you find a lot more. People just want to keep moving on. So it's not one way is better or the other. It's just that the system here is set up to encourage people to move on. Whereas in other systems, you could be backed by insurance. There are other factors that come into play to say, okay, why do you not want to settle quickly? Or if you don't, what are the consequences? Here, I would say there isn't that much of a net to protect you if you don't move forward.
So it has to be a little bit commercial, a little bit convenient. You have to think of the economical factors before you go to court, and this is probably one of the reasons I always try to avoid going into litigation of any kind.
And rightly so, and that's why you see that there's such an encouragement of alternate dispute resolution here. You see what is happening at the federal level and at the level of each emirate. There's a lot of encouragement of mediation, for example. And I would recommend mediation to any party that is involved in a dispute, because if you can try to resolve things amicably with a trusted intermediary, why not? And again, a lot of business people tend to not realize that an arbitrator or a judge cannot be a mediator. They have to find one way or the other.
Absolutely.
They might be able to encourage the parties to go find a settlement or give them a nudge one way or the other. But at the end of the day, their job is to say, this is the law, these are the facts, and this is my conclusion, and only one party can win, right? Some disputes can end up with one party winning on some issues and the other party winning on the other, but there is a win and a loss. Yeah. Whereas with mediation,
it's different.
It's about what works and how can people move on.
Of course, with the mediation, you can involve a lot of expertise. You can save a lot of time. You can actually sit down, reduce the amount of emotions, reduce the amount of hard feelings or negative energy in the room, and the involvement of other legal professionals who would like to entertain how angry is their clients. Yes, I totally agree with you. And in my opinion, I would always try to go to court as a last resort. So I try everything before.
Absolutely.
There is no point of just from a conflict or from a misunderstanding into a litigation. So let's sit down, let's meet, let's have a coffee, talk about it, let's bring an expert, let's bring another expert, and try to do all what we can just to resolve it out of court. Because when it goes to court, it's really not business and it's really not expertise. It's just the law.
When I was in law school, my alternate dispute resolution professor used to say that with alternate dispute resolution, you have to find the solution that people are least unhappy with.
Okay.
Because everyone feels like they're losing something, when they compromise. But what
is the
least unhappiness?
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. You didn't tell me, how did you end up in Dubai?
So, as I told you earlier, when I was in the States, I met the girl who's now my wife, and she's American, she's a lawyer. I was an Indian lawyer, and I wasn't qualified in England at the time. And I had always thought that I'd be going back to Bombay, right, to the Bombay High Court. But when I met her, things changed because India at the time did not allow foreign lawyers. Uh-huh. So I was like looking around, I wanted a solution, right? So I went to my professors in New Orleans at Tulane University and I asked for advice. And they introduced me to some people here, to what was then one of the largest law firms in the Middle East. And they were like, oh, you know what? Actually, we're looking for Indian lawyers to join us here. Because we're looking to enter the Indian market and we need people who understand English law. and maritime law and India. I was like, I'm your man.
Exactly. A perfect match.
So I was like, huh, okay, wow. I check all those boxes and boom, But unlike a lot of people, we did not come here thinking we're going to be here for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, or we'll go back home, because back home meant different things to both of us.
Yes.
So we just stayed until now. So yeah, and part of just staying here meant having kids here who this is the only home they've known, and Dubai really encourages people coming and putting down roots. So yes. It's been great that way for us.
Very interesting, very inspiring. So you found the perfect match, and your first employer found the perfect match. So it was meant to be. Amazing.
It was, yeah.
Do you love your job?
Sometimes I do.
Okay. That took a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, I like the analytical side of being a lawyer, to try to find an answer, try to find a solution. What I don't like is what we were discussing earlier, that at the end of the day, what we help people with as lawyers is, especially as disputes lawyers, is a distraction from their everyday life. So, some of my clients tell me openly that I'm one of the last people they'd like to speak with.
Yeah.
It's like, I saw an email the other day from a client saying, I wish I could say I look forward to working with you again, but I don't want to be in that position again.
Yeah.
So that's something I don't quite enjoy. Of course, when you go, when you talk to larger clients, larger commercial enterprises, there's another aspect to it, which is dispute management, dispute avoidance. How do you proactively try to avoid getting into litigation? And that's something that I enjoy working on, like at the stage of negotiating a contract or negotiating a big acquisition. That's where we lawyers can add value by saying, hey, let's try to predict what could go wrong and see how we can deal with it, right? But again, it needs buy-in from the clients to actually invest in that sort of proactive dispute avoidance strategy.
So you always advise your clients to come to you before they decide?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
have a chat about their ideas, their future plans with the business, with the family, or whatever, just to make sure that you explain the consequences of these decisions.
You're absolutely right. And the thing is, they're also my favorite kind of clients. It's always difficult to work on a case where, you get a call from a client saying, I've been sued. Can you jump on the team now? Whereas if you get a call that says we expect to be sued 6 months from now, can you look through the papers and see where this is headed? You're already well prepared.
Absolutely.
So and there are both kinds of clients. So some people try to put things off until the last minute, until it's inevitable that you have to engage lawyers. And some people think, oh yeah, it's a good idea to get people involved beforehand.
Right.
So,
do you see the UAE cost for common law lawyers is, let's say, an obstacle?
I think it has more to do with the first thing that you mentioned, which is there are a lot of first-generation entrepreneurs here. And if you look at the history of Dubai, this explosive growth has only happened during the Sheikh Mohammed era, since 2006. So it's not a very long time, and you don't have as many multi-generational businesses as you would find in other business capitals of the world. So you have some family businesses, but a majority of the businesses here are first-generation entrepreneurs. So, and that has an impact on how they look at, professional services and I mean, and not just lawyers, but any professional services, right? They look at accountants and bankers and insurance brokers.
Yeah,
they look at them the same way. It's like I want as little to do with you lot as possible.
I'm going to use you when I get in trouble. I'm going to give you a call. I have your number.
Yeah.
I'll call you when I need you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is the next step in the evolution of Dubai and of the UAE as a whole, as a business hub, to get to that level of maturity where people have been around for a while and have seen this before, and it's not the first time that they're going to court.
Right. Yes.
So the number of times people have told me, oh, this is the first time I've had to engage a lawyer. Right. And it's not just something to do with their personal life. These are business people, who are running fairly large businesses. Oh, I have not had to do this before. So when we get to a place where people have done this before a number of times, and again, that's what I see in places like the US, one of the world's most litigious societies, and India, where I'm from, which is another of the world's most litigious societies.
Yeah.
So, India in particular, where people have been in court for like generations, where somebody's grandfather sued somebody else's grandfather, and now the grandchildren are fighting with each other.
Continuously, I've
So
seen this in Egypt as well. Putting in mind all the development that the UAE is doing and the changes and the development that's happening in many of the UAE courts, we see that more and more they're accommodating more languages. They are accommodating the technology into the legal system, accommodating even documents and accepting some documents not to be translated anymore because the norm is to accept it in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Where do you see the future of the legal industry in the UAE, specifically in common law jurisdiction? Where can it develop even more for the future? And what could be your advice to junior lawyers who want to be well equipped for this new development?
Thank you. Excellent question. As we've been talking about, there's a lot going on in the UAE right now. One of the things I should mention is the speed at which this country adopted remote hearing technology in the courts, right? Where during the COVID lockdown, the rest of the world, the courts had shut down. The UAE courts just went on to Microsoft Teams and remote hearings within a span of like 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, a few days and it was on.
So the speed at which things change here is remarkable. It has its downsides. For example, in the last 18 months, we've seen so many new laws, just wholesale rewrite of legislation because the laws that were passed 50 years ago when this place became one country, they have not necessarily kept up to date. So let's do a 21st century rewrite for the next 50 years. Great idea. The challenge that comes along with that is we have all these lawyers, you and me included,
Starting from scratch,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So in terms of what I see over the next 12 to 18 months, a lot of us will get to grips with what the law actually says, right? So,
absolutely.
So I think 2024 is going to be the year of better legal advice. Because the other thing is a lot of lawyers like you and I, people have come here and have been working here for the last 10, 15, 20 years, have been used to working in a constant state of flux. So it's, constant firefighting, moving on to the next challenge and the next challenge. So if as we expect, the next few years are going to be relatively stable in terms of lawmaking, in terms of adapting to these new laws.
New changes.
I see that there will be an opportunity for lawyers to upskill themselves, right? Rather than just focus on the immediate here and now, what does my client need today, to taking a broader view of what do I need to do for myself and for my clients for over the next 10 years. As you know, I'm involved with the International Association of Young Lawyers.
Yes.
And we're both involved with the Emirates Legal Network.
Yes.
So you will see, and this is my prediction for the next few years, we'll see a lot more of professional networking and professional upskilling because it's sorely needed. You know, it cannot be a place where, you know, it's the other side of the coin of, you know, you only go to a lawyer in an emergency.
Where do you see the AI contributing to the UAE and the legal society? I mean, specifically the legal society and the legal profession in the UAE.
I do think that AI has a role to play. I'm not quite sure where exactly yet, because legal research using AI is still up in the air with hallucinations and what have you.
Yeah.
But if you have tailored models, and we're seeing some of those. I don't know the correct technical terms for it, but rather than using, you know, these large language models, people are actually adapting them using closed libraries.
Yes.
And the accuracy levels are vastly increased. So there are some law firms that are rolling these out to their clients for them to use to negotiate contracts, to assist with legal research and so forth.
With this spirit, I would like to do a very small game with you. So I'm going to ask you a question, and based on your answer, we will compare it to the answer that the AI is going to come up with. So, who would win in a custody case of a pet in the UAE? Would it be the one who bought the pet or the one who is walking the pet every day?
The one who bought the pet, because the UAE does not recognize beneficial ownership. It only recognizes registered ownership. You don't have a concept of trusts under onshore law. So I think whoever's name's on the documents is going to win.
Don't you think the best interest of the dog will be in as a factor that will make the civil law courts change their opinion?
Well, I mean, if it had to do with compensation, probably. But in terms of who gets the dog, I don't think so.
The one with the receipt.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask the same question to ChatGPT. The outcome of a pet custody case, such as for a dog, would typically depend on various factors, and there is no straightforward answer as to whether the person who bought the dog or the one who walks it every day would win. The court may consider aspects like the welfare of the animal, proof of ownership, the ability of each party to provide care, and emotional attachment. However, it's important to note that the legal framework regarding pets in the UAE might not be as extensively developed as in some other jurisdictions. Legal advice from a professional familiar with the UAE law would be necessary for a much more understanding of such cases. And
in other words, ChatGPT doesn't
we don't know. Okay, I get it. Hari, thank you so much for being here with us. This is your legal dose of Monday Legal. See you next week.